Welcome in. Former Mesa County Clerk and Recorder Tina Peters was recently found guilty on 7 of the 10 charges brought against her by the prosecution. She now joins us via Zoom for an exclusive interview on her thoughts of the trial. Ms. Peters, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dalen. I appreciate you having me.
Of course. What are your thoughts about the guilty verdicts?
It's an interesting verdict because as we're going through the trial, we saw that the prosecution would not let us in with any of our affirmative defenses. Much excluded evidence was kept from the jury. For instance, the Code Monkey Z video that they kept talking about that was so damning, but they never would let the jury see it. And if they had seen it, they would have seen there were no passwords in there. And speaking to the passwords, when I took that video was because Conan was not even there at the trusted bill yet. The trusted bill went on for an hour and a half before he was even there. So I was keeping track of what was going on to the best of my ability so that he would know what he had missed. So the passwords that were, if there were any passwords that were taken, they were subsequently deleted during the trusted build because that's what Dominion's instructions instruct the Secretary of State, Danny Casillas, to do in the instructions, which I have a copy of.
Now, the jury got back to their decision relatively quick on Monday, but the Friday before that, you made a decision not to testify. Can you explain why?
Yes, I did. So I don't know if the cameras were on during this time. Most definitely, the jury was not in the room. But this is what I said to the judge, and this is verbatim. I said, "Good afternoon, Judge. I'm going to make a decision whether to testify. There are 2 witnesses before me, so I'm going to defer to it, and 2 questions that I need your answer. I have very limited things that I want to talk to the jury about. I want to be assured that the scope of prosecution cross-examination is limited to the exact areas that I testify about. My attorneys have told me that I'm not allowed to tell the jury that Conan Hayes was a government security, had a government security clearance, and he was a government informant. Whether or not, and I discussed the background with him. I gave him the affidavit that Conan, the declaration that he had signed, and none of that was presented to the jury. Here's what happens, Dalen, in what should happen is that when I am a witness, or anyone's a witness, and you heard this multiple times during the trial, when they said that's outside the scope, you cannot talk about, the prosecution should have been limited to only being able to ask me what my attorney had what I had testified to. But it sounded from what the judge had said, or the lack of promise that he had made to me, that that was not going to be the case for me.
Now, you've mentioned that you are appealing. On what grounds?
Well, you know, there's a lot of excluded evidence that was never presented. I mentioned the Code Monkey Z video that they made such a big deal about, but never would let the jury see. Also, the 12-minute audio recording that Stephanie Winholtz presented that was played over and over. But when I presented, and Sharona Bishop was actually in the room, I had recorded the 1 and 7-minute audio recording, and they would not admit that. And that would have given a reference to what that whole meeting was about, but that was excluded. Also, the instructions for the trusted build was excluded. The reports from the comparison of the 2 images that you can see at tinapeters.us, just my name.us, you can see the reports. They never would let those in. And that Sandra Brown, Belinda Nisley, and Gerald Wood knew of Conan and assisted, and the text chats verified by experts prove this. Conan Hayes was a high-level government informant with government security clearance, and he was instrumental in the takedown of international organized crime cartels, as well as other government operations. My promise to conceal his identity for his and his family's safety and the operations he conducted in the government. So there's going to be more of this about the excluded evidence and you know, I don't blame the jury. They could only go on what they were given, and they were not given the exculpatory and vital evidence to prove that it was me and only me as the elected official that had the authority to bring Conan Hayes in to do an investigation. And people can see that, like I said, at tinapeters.us or at RealTinaPeters on X.
Ms. Peters, once again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. God bless.